Good morning. I probably review anywhere from 3 to 6, 7 settings slash sales slash cold calls per day. And one of the most common mistakes I see everyone make at every level, whether you are a beginner, whether you're kind of starting to find the ropes, or whether you're a seasoned vet and you know what you're doing, there's one common mistake I still see everyone make, yet no one even knows they make it because everyone's just being taught sales this way. And so I'm going to teach you what it is, and I'm going to reprogram your mind to a different way of thinking that can allow you to feel that you can connect more with your prospects, like really get to connect with them on a deeper level, understand them better, and have them trust you more. All right. And so what this problem is that a lot of people, and by a lot I mean most people, listen to reply, but they don't listen to understand. And there's a big difference between the two. Listening to reply means you just listen to hear what the prospect says to then give a response, right? And how you can identify if you do this is if someone is talking, and you find yourself latching on to one thing they say and getting ready to respond to a certain thing that they said, 2-3 minutes ago, that means you're listening to just reply. Or if you're following a sales script and you're waiting for the prospect to reply just so you can get on to the next bullet point, that is a sign that you are listening to reply, not to understand. Now, what does this do from the prospect end? Well, I'll give you a very real example that happens a lot in a lot of the cold call reviews that I do. One of my guys will be calling, and he'll be asking, how are you doing? And the prospect will say, good, you, and they say, yeah, and then they will just say, yeah, great, anyways, and move on. And the prospect can clearly tell that they weren't actually listening to what they said. They're only listening to reply. I'll give you another example. One time I had a guy, he was calling, and he said, how's that going for you? And the guy said, not good. He said, okay, cool, and moved on. And when I went and reviewed, I was like, dude, he told you it's not going well. You just said cool and moved on. What happened? And he's like, I just totally forgot about it. I was going down the script, etc. And now that's very drastic, right? I would say that's, a bit of an outlier. But this happens all the time in very little, just tiny things, right? Like, I remember I was watching a call review the other day of one of my setters, and basically he had asked the prospect a question. And through, I'm trying to think, what did the prospect say? The prospect said something along the lines of he's like, oh, yeah, he asked him, yeah, Ken, is it cool if you give me 20 seconds? And the prospect said, sure. He's like, okay, cool, thanks. Like, repeated himself 3 times because he didn't know what to say because he wasn't listening to understand. He was listening to reply. Now, this is very surface level. We're going to go a bit deeper in a second here, right? But a lot of people don't listen to understand. Now, what happens when you listen to understand? Well, it means, first off, you are not waiting for the prospect to just say something. You're actually trying to understand. And so sometimes it may take you a second to reply, right? Someone might say something to you and you may go, okay, yeah, $40 a month, gotcha. And I guess, could you tell me a bit more about this, right? And when you take that delay, the prospect, even if you do intentionally, feels that you're trying to process the information to understand it like he does. Because you don't understand the situation like he does until he tells you. And even then, you're never going to understand it to the extent at which he goes through it because you're a different person, right? And prospects buy from people that feel understand them, because if they feel you understand them, they feel you could probably help them solve that problem. And so what you want to do is on your calls is you want to listen, not to reply, not to move on with the script, not to just get the call over with, but to understand what the prospect is saying. And if you put the script aside for a second, if you truly just listen to what the prospect is saying, you will have such more fruitful, engaging, purposeful conversations now. Because now, instead of just trying to get through the script, you're actually listening. And the prospect can feel that, because you can I'm sure everyone here can understand and know the difference between when someone is listening and when they're listening. Right? There's a big difference. If you ever give a presentation in a class in front of a whole group of people, you'll know most people are just listening. They're not actually listening. They're just kind of like there. They're hearing what you say, but they're not really understanding. But once in a while, you'll have that one person who's sitting there with their notepad out, like looking up and down, writing notes, like asking questions. You tell they're really listening to understand, not just to reply, not just to get it over with. And so be that guy taking notes. Be that guy trying to really understand the prospect. Okay? And you do that by, when the prospect is talking, just listen. Don't think of what you're going to say next. Don't think of, oh my goodness, what question am I going to ask? How am I going to probe? How am I going to clarify? Just listen. listen and try and understand what the prospect is saying. And guess what? By you trying to understand, you will by accident ask those probing and clarifying questions because you will want to understand the situation, right? The prospect's talking, yeah, this and this and this and this. And you're like, okay, this and this. But I guess, like, what about this, right? And you'll ask that with natural tonality, with natural facial expressions, and all these other things. Why? Because you're actually curious, because you're actually interested. And so now instead of having to fake all this tonality stuff, you'll do it on purpose, like by accident, if that makes sense. Right? You're going to do it just as a byproduct of trying to want to understand the prospect better. And if you can implement this, your calls will go so much more successful, but they also feel so much better because you'll really feel like you understand the prospect. Okay? So make that shift in your head of trying to understand the prospect, not just, what do I say next? And your conversation will be better, you will close more deals, and your prospects will also be happier with you.